our speaker today, I'm always excited when he says yes to speaking, and because he's got such an incredible information to share. But I have to share one little thing about Zod. So Zod is very, very detailed, right? And so when I ask him to submit to me, hey Zod, can you give me what the title of your talk would be, and also give me some bio information. I get an email that's this long. He's very thorough because why? He's a PhD. He's a professor. He teaches. He lectures. You are mesmerized in his class for an hour at a time, or maybe 2 hours. So he's very, very detailed. He's a student of the Course in Miracles over many, many years, and I love the way he is a seeker of truth. He's always searching out the scientific part of it along with the metaphysical part of it. And so today, his talk, The Union of Secular and Spiritual Thought for Real Healing, is very enticing. So if you guys could please introduce our PhD from UCLA, our professor of life. Give him a nice big applause. Zod.
I didn't get copies today. I didn't get any copies today.
Darn, he
I
usually has
copies
handouts.
for everybody, but I'm not going
Well,
to.
you can give us a verbal test. Okay?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to talk off my head.
All right.
I should, because my goal has been to try to find a way to conjoin spiritual and secular psychology. I worked for many years at still do as a therapist. I teach at UAA. So I'm kind of familiar with secular psychology and the scientific method as a whole. Over the years, I've been a therapist working with people one-on-one, talking to people one-on-one. So I felt like I understood what therapy is about, but I also felt that it was useful, but it didn't really heal anybody. And if you have done something for 25 years, you have a right to come to conclusion. I came to the conclusion that we weren't really helping people that much. We do give them useful information, but the information doesn't answer certain deep questions of who am I, why am I here, and so on and so forth. And let me just say, personalize it. When my son was in college, he was studying chemistry at Berkeley, and at some point he said, I'm quitting school, I don't want to go to school anymore. I asked him why. He says he doesn't see the point to it. He's really a bright kid, and he told me he's dropping out. I said, let's talk. So, as you guys noted, I left town here. I used to be here. I quit here for a little while. We went to California just to be close to him. So we talked, and I was taking part-time, so when he was in school. So I was able to figure out that he was depressed, but not what psychologists or psychiatrists call clinical depression, but what I gave the name existential depression. I coined that. I coined that, but it means the same. Any of you who know, I'm sure everybody here knows what depression is. In depression, clinically, the person feels like life is pointless, meaningless. They have no energy to do anything. They have no energy to go to work or school or anything, groom themselves. They have just given up on life. That's clinical depression. And you can see it in their face because they tend to look blank, lifeless, no interest in life. So that's usually when somebody gets to that level, if you go to therapists, they'll probably refer you to psychiatrists who will give you medication. And the medication they give to you, something like Prozac or Zoloft, or whatever, Wellbutrin, they're basically coffee. That's what it is. I'm just breaking it down to you. They're stimulants. What they do is they stimulate a part of your brain to produce a serotonin, which stimulates, and you begin to sweat. They actually sweat. And they really have energy and forget about, the sense of boredom, the sense of giving up. It works about a few months. Then the questions come back again. The questions of life. So anyway, I talked to my son that I understand what he's doing, and that depression, which is what he had, it wasn't really clinical depression, but it was existential depression, because he was asking, why should I be alive? He was actually contemplating suicide. So what are we doing here? He looked at, he's very good in chemistry, he was actually on scholarship, some kind of, anyway, so he said, what is it? I understand the material things matter, everything. He'll take you through it, says it doesn't add up, it's just, because if you take the scientific approach to phenomena, it just describes everything for you. Describes this table, we know what this thing is made of, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, all that stuff, we know what it is, mostly inorganic matter. So we know what it is. So his point is, he was able to grasp that science teaches appearances. Science teaches the here and now. Science teaches what we're looking at. Science tells me what this is, what it's about. How the universe began 13.37 billion years ago, the evolution, and then how it will end in heat loss. So he goes through that. Says, well, we shall eventually die. Why don't I die right now? So anyway, so after I went over that, I said, listen, throughout human evolution, our forefathers, human beings, have always had a need to answer the question, who am I? Where did we come from? And they posited their ideas, what we now call religion. They didn't do it because they were flippant, but because those questions were critical for their survival. Human beings are those creatures that must answer basic questions of existence to make their lives meaningful. Regardless of what anybody may tell you, you study science, and I'm at the university, as I know, I relate with physical scientists. They too are grappling with the issue we are talking about. So I said to him, what you need to do is to explore some religion, explore not superficial religion, explore things like Hinduism, Buddhism, metaphysical religions, and you don't need to accept any of them because those religions were formulated thousands of years ago. Buddhism is 2,500 years ago. Hinduism is over 4,000 years, and Christianity 2,000. I told him they reflected the level of knowledge at the time that they were evolved. So study them and see whether you can come to terms with your own understanding. And he did that. So we talked. The idea is he began to realize that there is something deeper than life than meets the eyes. So based on what I did with him and my own personal experience, I came to realize that each of us, in addition to secular psychology or science, also needs some spiritual psychology, which is something to root him into something that is beyond appearances. I do believe that there is a part of us that is in connection with something that cannot be expressed in language. A part of us that is in connection with what our ancestors called God. You don't have to call it God. Call it whatever you want. Spirit. But I do believe it is real. I do believe that if an individual has found a way to connect himself to that higher force in a meaningful way for him, not for anybody else, he is going to overcome most of the things we call mental illnesses. I've given you depression because my son had that, and I think his depression is gone. He's back into school and everything, so I think his depression. So I think his depression. But looking at it though, from the other mental illnesses, I also came to the realization that what we heal them is not what we're doing for them right now. As any of you knows, if you are manic depressive, say bipolar, you go to psychologist office, they do what they call a little bit of intake. They ask you a question, they immediately give you a diagnosis, and they give you lithium or Vivacode or whatever. And so that's all they do. They don't listen to them anymore because nobody has the time to do what people call in-depth analysis anymore. They just give you medication. The medications do work. If you're excited, if you're manic and you're up, laughing and stuff, they give you lithium, within 2 weeks you're calm. You almost look normal. But in my judgment, having dealt with them in therapy sessions, I said, I understand that there is a biochemical aspect to it. I'm not denying contemporary neuroscience, but I also think there is something else going on that until you understand it, you cannot really heal them. So I looked at all the mental disorders, whether it is schizophrenia, whether it is delusion, all of them over the years. I came to the realization that they all reflect living without spiritual connection. All of them. That was my conclusion, and I will try to tell you how I reached that conclusion. Now, because I've dealt with the mentally ill both in a psychiatric hospital and seen them I know what the symptoms are, so I can see what they are doing. And so I came to realize that what they are doing is creating God. They're actually trying to create God in their own fashion. Let's give an example of some of the things. Let's say a manic person. Somebody, if you have seen a manic person, go to API and see when they're in a manic phase, they claim to be so important. I'm God. I'm the wealthiest person. They write back checks and write millions. They're acting like they are so powerful, so godlike, so powerful that some of them may latch onto a very important person. I'm Bill Gates, I'm God, I'm Napoleon, or whatever. Now, what are they trying to do? What are they doing? They're trying to make their ego important. So I came to the realization that they're using their mind to latch onto a picture of life that puts them on a pedestal, and their mind works somehow with their biochemistry to stimulate their body. And what we're looking at is only the stimulated body. The body, because when they're in a manic phase, they're excited, they're hot. You know, if you see them, they're all over. So I said, but it is what they are trying to be that led their mind to construct this. I said, what is it they're trying to be? So I came to the realization that it is because they're living a life where they look at themselves only as a body, as an ego, and that's not enough. To be enough, they have to use their mind to create a powerful self, God. By the way, this I realized lately after my own realization that what I discovered is not really new. There's a psychoanalyst that used to be called Erich Fromm. Has anybody heard about him? You know the stuff I'm talking about in the 1970s. I didn't know that before. Erich Fromm says mental illness is an attempt to become God when God is out of your life. Basically, it says all mental illness comes, if you realize, mental disorders tend to occur around 17. Mostly 17, 18-year-old become schizophrenic. But it says, because at that time they become existentially aware of who they are and what life is, and the pointlessness, meaninglessness, and then they try to create something in their mind that will give them the sense of I'm Zeus. Like if you talk to a schizophrenic paranoid type, he will tell them Zeus and the god of the room books or whatever. He will claim things like that. So what Erich Fromm and what I have come to realize is that unless individuals have some kind of religion that gives them connection to a higher power, they will try to create it by themselves. In trying to create it, they create a psychosis, which will be reflected by their own body type. I just gave you a manic person who calls himself all kinds of grandiose stuff. And I can also say schizophrenic. A schizophrenic is somebody who has delusions and has hallucinations, he has voices. If you pay attention to the voices that you're hearing, the voices are usually something that elevates them. Okay? So we say, oh, they're hearing voices and they self-stimulate, but go pay attention to the voice they're listening to. And what the voice is telling them, what the voices, if you pay attention, is meaningful to them. They're having a conversation with an unseen voice, which to you and I means pointless. Let's say you're with a schizophrenic in your office, is talking to the Queen of England, and they're having conversation. He and the Queen, they're having conversation. This is the way it normally works. And you say, you really talking to the Queen? Yeah. And he says, yeah, you say, you mean you can see her? Yeah, I'm talking to her. Obviously, you will know he's hallucinating, visual or auditory. But the question is, why is he doing that? What is it that makes him want to do that? So I gradually came to the realization that it is the absence of a higher power in our lives that lead people to all these mental tricks that get them. Talking to the queen, she is very important. It's somebody, not the lowly person he is in life. It's now somebody who can talk to the queen or whatever. It kind of gives him a sense of prestige, whatever. If you remove those things, he comes back to where we are at, which is what I call existential nothingness. So for you to really heal him, you have to connect him to something that gives him a sense of power, connection, what, meaning, and that is what the traditional function of religion, the traditional function of spirituality, but our modern school systems that emphasize only the rational have taken away all those things. So these people just emphasize only the rational, but the rational doesn't answer higher questions. The rational does not answer questions that are deeper than appearances. And also, our modern school system of science has led people to believe that you can understand everything, which is not true. Because it is not true. When people have certain experiences, they immediately think that there's something wrong with them. It's not true. There are experiences human beings have that go beyond physical things. I'm kind of up to date in physics. Let me give an example. I think we have talked about this earlier on somewhere during my last presentation. Where physics is at and where computer is actually trying to go to, which is called quantum computing, and let me give you an example. The experiment which began with Einstein in 1935 that led him to what he called the spooky action of things. The fact that you can connect two particles, Einstein discovered in 1935, you entangle two particles, you separate them, even if you put them miles apart or at the end of the universes, and you touch one, both of them will react simultaneously, as if there is no distance between them. Remember that Einstein had told us that nothing could travel beyond the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, approximately. It's a little more than that. But here he was in 1935 realizing that at the particle level, things travel as if there is no distance between them. There's no distance. As if there is no locality. They're all one. So he couldn't believe it because he says this is more like spirituality, more like religion. So this was 1935 when he discovered the non-local behavior of particles. And in people didn't take it because it was theoretical. In 1962, an Irish physicist working in Geneva, son, John Bell, actually discovered the same thing and gave it a theory, a mathematical theory, which is called Bell's theorem, that proved it in 1970s. A French guy, Alan Aspect, experimentally proved it by actually entangling two particles or three particles or 10 particles and then separating them miles away around France. And when one is touched, they all react at the same time. In other words, there is no time and space at that level. Science, physics has proved. So, is that not what, if you put it into spirituality, what people who are into spirituality are saying in their own way? We laugh at them when people into spirituality say that they can communicate with people apart from us. We say, nah, you have to go to space-time to do that. But this is, that kind of stuff tells us that it does happen in nature. And many, many things happen in nature that we have not really understood. We sweep them under the rug. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are mysteries that have been neglected by our modern education. Those mysteries have not been understood, but religion tries to grasp them in its own way. In trying to do that, they answer questions for people. So if you leave religion out or spirituality out, obviously I'm speaking to the choir, everybody here is into spirituality, so I'm not making any saying anything that you don't already know, because I'm sure most of you have gone through the process until you find what makes sense to you. But the point I'm making is people out there who have not found a way to connect to the powers that be outside of us, they are mostly lost, and they tend to have issues with mental health, what we call mental health issues. And so what I've been doing then is to try to figure out a way in the writing and everything to conjoin both of them. I'm not ignoring science. I'm not ignoring secular science, because science is real. Science explains things real. I know what this table is made of. Both element at the element point, at the particle point, I know those. So it is real. Science is very useful. But once you go beyond science and ask questions, you find that science is just superficial. That's what I'm trying to say. Much as it is complex, it is still superficial because it hasn't answered serious questions. It is, the scientists say, let's begin here and not ask any question beyond this. Let's deal with this. But the questions they don't want to answer are questions human beings want to answer. Okay? Human beings want to answer those questions. Like what she said, I gave a little paper here, which I said, oh, okay, let's look at contemporary cosmology. What did they teach you in physics? 13.7 billion years ago, out of nowhere, a point of light came out. Right there, that's magic. Okay? It's almost like talking about the Bible saying God created the world in 8 days. How is that different from it? A point of light came out. Where did it come out from? We just assume a point of light came out, exploded, within a second it shattered itself into photons. Photons somehow change themselves into quarks, change themselves into electrons, change themselves into protons, neutrons, as if it is magical stuff. Light, that's what they're telling us. Light came out and transformed itself. First of all, split itself. One point of light split itself. Everybody here who has a scientific background knows what I'm talking about. A point of light came out of nowhere, split itself into infinite parts, and then those parts immediately changed into quarks. Quarks combined into protons, neutrons. By the end of 3 minutes, according to their theory, the protons and neutrons have joined into nuclear, and we're told thousands of years later, nuclear captured the electrons, and you have atoms, the basic atoms, which is hydrogen. We're told then the universe was a sea of hydrogen for almost 1 billion years, and suddenly there was asymmetry. There was space between them, and each clump of hydrogen was acted by gravity inside its core. Heat and pressure led to the synthesis of helium, and the star is born. A star is basically a bunch of hydrogen where heat and energy transforms hydrogen into helium and produces. So we know all those things. So you ask, and then the big stars, the initial stars, as if it is by magic, they lived only a few million years and exploded. In the explosion, they created the other elements. Any element under iron is produced in the star. Anything above iron was produced during the supernova and shattered into space. So we are given all this story, how these things happened, and eventually on planet Earth, we're told 3.7 billion years ago, we know how the Earth came about from old stars in a pool of water. Has anybody actually read what biology says is the origin of life? In a pool of water, all these elements join together by accident. In the water, you enter the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and so on. Now they have, initially it used to be about 10 of it, they have now increased it to 64. So all these little elements came into a pool of water, and lightning acted as a heat source and struck the water and combined them into molecules, and from there you get animals. This is magical thinking, in my opinion. Because so I said to myself, how did you get all the... In 1952, there was a guy at University of Chicago, I'm sure you have heard about Miller in Europe. He got all those chemicals and put them in a test tube and heated them up. He got a jelly, so but he didn't really get human flesh. So the evidence is still inconclusive. But science teaches kids that that's how we came about. We came about by these chemicals that have been evolved by nature and water, light, heat, combine them like you do in a test tube, heat, and then voila, you have human flesh. I said to myself, this is just conjectures, okay? This is like what our fathers did in the past when they wrote the Bible. What they wrote in the Bible makes sense to people at that time. And what we write in science now makes sense to us. But I said it is not the answer. It is not the answer. The scientific paradigm we all accept because we're living in this time. 100, 200 years ago, in the future, there will be another paradigm. So what that led me to believe is that there is a spiritual dimension that refuses to be quantified, that refuses to be understood through rational means, and that every person has to figure out a way, either by their own thinking processes or by latching onto, I was raised as a Catholic, so I know how the Catholics explain things, but it doesn't make sense to me. But either way, you have to figure out a way to align yourself with the higher forces, because I do know that they're true. And I know that they're true because I've had some experiences myself. So I don't have what people call a cavalier attitude towards people who tell me about the spiritual experience, because I know that they're true. Because the physical sciences do not explain things, or they explain what I call what we can understand. But beyond that, there are things we cannot understand. So what I do then, although I've no longer left what you call therapies, because I figure, oh, this is nonsense, it's not working, so I prefer to teach and write, which is what I do now. But, so I tell people though, to explore spirituality, because that is the answer to your problems. I'm not telling them to ignore science. I say, yeah, study science, reach its limits, and then find something that makes sense to you. And don't let anybody tell you that those spiritual experiences are not true, because they're true for you. We may not be able to explain them rationally as of now. For example, nobody has been able to explain the non-locality stuff. There are many aspects of physics that nobody has been able to explain. And they tell physics students, don't ask why, just do it. Much of quantum physics, they tell the students, don't ask why. It works. But if you ask why it works, you go crazy, because you cannot. That's what they tell students. Just do it. It does work. So don't ask why it works, because if you get into that, you get into spirituality, you get into philosophy, and those are beyond physics. So let's just say it works. And that's where we are at. So then I guess what I'm trying to say is, I tell people to embrace whatever spiritual path makes sense to them, and don't allow anybody to tell you that they are meaningless, because they are meaningful. Because people do have experiences that science cannot explain. I moved into an apartment in town here. You know, I left town, as I said before, and I came back because I went to try to deal with my son when he was in college in California. So I went there. I took leave of absence here. And then I came back. I moved into an apartment in town. I just want to share with you this experience. And everybody knows my girlfriend, because she was with me. So she was there. We moved into an apartment. She came to visit from Arizona. We moved in. I just came back from California, stayed with a friend, and we found a place to live. And the very first night, we felt like there's somebody walking around in that apartment, running around. You know, I thought, what is this? I've lived in apartments. I know what freaky stuff can happen inside walls. It felt like somebody's running around, and she's the one who first noticed it. What is going on? So we tried to rule out every possibility, because it was in the bedroom walls. If you're in the bedroom, you feel like somebody's running by the wall. So I said, well, maybe because let's see how they heated this place. They heated it with oil, with water. Maybe that's the water. I said, but water doesn't feel like it is working. So we ruled that out. We ruled out many scientific factors that could have caused it. Okay? Then finally, she said, there are ghosts here. I said, nah, there's no such thing as ghosts. I dismissed it. But it kept on, so I went to the manager and said, this is what is happening. The manager sent in the maintenance person to come and look. So we said, it comes at 5 o'clock in the evening and 5 in the morning. So I said, come here at 5 o'clock, because it doesn't happen all the time. At 5 o'clock, he came in, and he said, there's somebody running around with it, somebody running around your bedroom. I said, no. He went, and he couldn't figure it out. He tried and tried and tried, he couldn't. Then the manager realized that somebody lived there and died a month before we moved into that place. A month at Providence Hospital. Before we moved in there, she said, maybe it has something to do with this person. I said, I don't know. But, superstitions are useful. I was raised as a Catholic. As a Catholic, they tell you to put a cross and go get holy water. Believe it, I did that. Even though I thought I was sophisticated, I went to the Catholic the downtown, and they gave me the father. I told them, they gave me 2 crosses. The father came into my place and took holy water and went, and the stuff went away. So we put the cross on the bedroom, one in the living room, and the Reverend Father walked around the place with his little water spreading. Go away, go away. It is stupid. But the critical point is it went away. Now, if you ask a scientist to explain it, he's not going to, he will say, oh, it is in your mind produced. No, I don't think so. Because several people were able to hear that stuff, and what people call magical intervention by the priest solved it. So even though I don't understand what the priest did or how it works, I'm likely going to accept that there are spiritual things that are beyond my understanding, and that's where I am at. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, it worked for me in that particular instance. If something else works for you in a spiritual intervention, don't let anybody ask you not to do it. Don't let anybody tell you that this is superstition, because it didn't work. Our forefathers did not latch onto those explanations because they were stupid, because it worked for them. And that's why they gave them to us to the present. So anyway, that's what I do. I kind of tell people to, yes, I do not negate your psychology, your science, go with it, but try to see what spiritual factors make sense to you and go with it. So that's the sum of what I do. Any questions? It's kind of like a personal story, but that's what I do. It does work for me. And I guess, as I said, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody here more or less. Yeah.
So, in the physical theory that you were, that it matters not that the separation of molecules, does this theory then explain how 2 people that are connected by love, like a parent or child or love mates, know if something tragic occurs to one or the other?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
Exactly what.
That's what I'm alluding at. I'm trying to say when people are entangled like that, parents and their children, lovers, yes, they can be connected. But if you say it, telepathy, that's the word people use. But if you say, people will laugh at you, oh, there's no such telepathy, it's just an accidental stuff. I pointed out the scientific part to show that an event could also happen at the micro level that shows us that people are connected or things are connected. And I think it also happens at the human level. If we go through quantum physics, Heisenberg's theory, it's not a theory, it's a fact, which he demonstrated that the individual observer affects what is observing. That's if quantum physics essentially says the individual observer actually affects what is observing. If you extrapolate from that, the world does not exist unless you are there. You are the creator of the world. I didn't want to go into that detail because it would seem like we're going far away. But that is what quantum physics says, that the observer affects experimentally what is observing. So what you're observing is never independent of you. You produce what you're observing. So you say that, we talk a little bit about the cosmic miracle, which I studied for many years. The cosmic miracle says, in effect, that the world is our imagination. The world was produced by our minds. We are, basically, the cosmic miracle says we are God. There is God, we are parts of God, sons of God. He says, I'm going to use Christian language, but you can use any other type of language. There is a force that's infinite. We are part of it. We are parts of it. We are if you call it God, then we are parts of sons of God. The cosmic miracle says, in eternity, we are all one. We're unified. God and his infinite sons are one. He says, until you experience it, don't try to explain it, because you cannot. But people have experienced it. Then he says, the book says, at some point we wanted to separate from God, but we could not. Then we went to sleep. And then in our sleep, we dreamed this world. And in the world, we see a world of separation. People are all over the place, and we are each of us say that we're different. But the cosmic miracle says you produce them. The world is your dream. Everybody you see is your dream. It's part of your dream, and you're part of their dream. And he says, this is difficult for you to understand, that if you want peace, love everybody you see, because you're really loving yourself. Forgive people because you're forgiving yourself. You think when you love somebody, you're loving somebody apart from you. He says, no, the person is your dream. You're loving yourself. He says, if you do that, you will have peaceful experiences. Ultimately, if you let go of your ego, he says, you will go back to God. That's what the Course teaches. It says, there is no hurry going back to God, but if that's what you want to do, you can let go of your ego, your sense of I, and you experience God again and know that you're God. That's basically the book in a summary. Now, most people haven't experienced that because we're not yet ready to let go of our ego and our body and then return to God. Now you say, well, this doesn't make any sense. I say it makes sense at the metaphysical level, but not at the here and now. And so that's how I live it, because if a book like that appeals to you, fine. If other books appeal to you, fine. Because the Course in Miracle itself says there are thousands of ways to get to God. Okay.
I wanted to add something
Yeah.
that came to me, Zod. Okay, so thought is an interesting, thought to me kind of reminds me of the creation of the universe.
Yes.
Where does thought come from? Like all of a sudden you get thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Which is an energy or whatever it is. So therefore science actually comes from thought.
Yes.
Because thought goes like, okay, now what if we apply this theory to, what conclusion we're looking for? It comes from thought. Nothing happens without some sort of thought, including the universe.
The universe is thought.
Everything.
A British physicist, astrophysicist called John Griffin says this universe is just thought. Our minds, he said, wrote the DNA and put information into it. And if you follow science last week, they've actually figured a way to put information and create artificial DNA. Last week, published in the British Journal of Science, Nature. They are now able to replicate that DNA and put a human being puts information into what is called a DNA and have it replicate. They've done it now. So the point is, Griffin says that there is a part of us that is beyond what we can even imagine, that our ancestors called God, but it is really intelligence that is us, and that we wrote the computer software that is running this world. And that's why we can understand this world. It's a software, and we can keep improving it, understand it, and write and do more. Right now, we travel at the speed of what? Our best rockets travel at 17,000 miles a minute, an hour, to escape the gravity of this world. You shoot it up, it must travel 17,000 miles, otherwise it will fall down. But we shall get to a point where we can travel at the speed of light. We will.
Can we travel at the speed of thought?
Yes.
Of course we
Yeah,
can,
and then at
right?
that point, we don't need any more instruments. Yeah. Yeah.
So then, is thought generated or is thought received?
We are taught, we're the thinking agent. Much of the consensus is that there is something in the universe that thinks. Call it God, call it whatever. And that agent, through his thinking, wrote the programs that we call our wall. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've not experienced it. Yeah.
Anywhere in our education system is this taught?
No. Because it is not provable. In scientific method, you know that. The scientific method, you have to have observable, replicable, verifiable. Everybody can prove it. What is water? You get oxygen and hydrogen, you mix them, you get heat, and it becomes, voila, it becomes water. But we cannot prove all those.
So in the world of quantum touch and quantum healing,
Yes,
it's only provable
to the individual.
to the individual receiver.
Yes, and it works. I know it works.
I know it works too.
Yeah, so, but if you go to the colleges, they will say, no. If you say it works, they call it placebo effect. They will say, oh, well, it works for you because you believe it works for you. But I know it works. Okay, I'm done.
Very cool. So,
Thank you.
thank you.